Elderly black woman helps a stranger for free. What he does next changes both their lives. Ruby was an elderly woman who lived in a small neighborhood at the edge of the city. She had lived here for as long as she could remember. The house she lived in was old, but it was warm and filled with memories of days gone by. Ruby had seen a lot in her life. She had raised children, lost loved ones, and lived through many challenges. But through it all, she had always kept a kind heart and a smile on her face. Every day, she would walk to the local market, where she would buy a few groceries and chat with the neighbors. It was a routine that kept her busy, and she liked it that way. The world around her had changed a lot over the years, but Ruby had stayed the same, calm, patient, and always ready to lend a helping hand. One crisp afternoon, Ruby was walking home from the market when she noticed a young man sitting on a bench in the park. It was a small park near the edge of the neighborhood. The trees were starting to lose their leaves, and the cool air made Ruby wrap her scarf tighter around her neck. She had seen the young man a few times before, always sitting in the same spot, looking distant and lost in thought. His clothes were worn and his face looked tired. It was clear he wasn't doing well, and Ruby couldn't help but feel a little sorry for him. Ruby wasn't the type of person to ignore someone in need. She had always believed that kindness could change the world, even if it was just in small ways. So she walked over to the bench where the young man was sitting. When she reached him, she smiled and said, "Good afternoon, son. You look like you could use a little company." The young man looked up at Ruby. His face was blank at first, almost as if he didn't expect anyone to speak to him, but Ruby's warm smile made him relax a little. "Hello," he replied softly, not sure how to respond. Ruby sat down on the bench beside him. "I was just getting some lunch from the market. I've got a sandwich here, but I've got more than enough to share. Would you like it?" she asked, holding out the sandwich. The young man hesitated for a moment. It wasn't that he didn't need the food, but he wasn't used to people offering help so easily. He was used to fending for himself, even if it meant going without. But something about Ruby's offer seemed genuine, and he didn't want to turn down kindness. So he nodded. "Thank you," he said, taking the sandwich. Ruby smiled and watched as he took a bite. She didn't say anything at first, letting him eat in peace. After a few moments, she spoke again, this time a little softer. "You know, sometimes the world can feel pretty heavy, but you don't have to carry everything by yourself." The young man looked at her, surprised by her words. He didn't know why, but there was something comforting in the way she spoke. "I'm just going through a rough patch," he said, his voice low. "I lost my job a while ago, and things haven't really gotten better since then." Ruby nodded, understanding. She had seen so many people go through difficult times over the years. She knew how hard it could be, especially when it felt like everything was falling apart. "I've been through my own share of struggles," she said, "but you can't let them define you. Life has a way of giving us second chances if we're open to them." The young man looked at Ruby, his expression still uncertain. "I don't know if I believe in second chances," he said quietly. "I've tried to turn things around, but it never works. It feels like I'm stuck." Ruby smiled gently. "You're not stuck. Sometimes we just need to change the way we look at things. Take a step back, breathe, and ask yourself, what's something small I can do today that will make tomorrow better?" He thought about it for a moment. "I don't know. I haven't had much luck lately." Ruby reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. She had always carried it with her, writing down little notes to herself. "I keep this to remind myself that there's always something to be grateful for," she said, showing him the notebook. "Maybe you could try it. Write down one thing every day, no matter how small, that you're thankful for. It can help shift your perspective." The young man looked at the notebook, considering her suggestion. He wasn't sure if it would help, but he couldn't deny that there was something comforting about Ruby's presence. It felt different from the usual people he encountered on the streets. They often ignored him or gave him strange looks, but Ruby seemed to see something in him that no one else had noticed. "All right, I'll give it a try," he said after a moment, tucking the notebook away. "I'm David, by the way," he added, extending his hand. Ruby took his hand and gave it a gentle shake. "It's nice to meet you, David. My name is Ruby, and don't worry, son, we all have our hard times, but if you stay open to the possibilities, I'm sure things will get better for you." David didn't say anything at first. He was unsure of how to respond, but he appreciated Ruby's kindness. It was something he hadn't felt in a long time. Most people were too caught up in their own lives to notice someone like him, but Ruby was different. After a few minutes of silence, Ruby stood up. I have to get going, but you take care of yourself, David. I'll be here again tomorrow if you ever need someone to talk to. David nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over him. Thank you, Ruby. I appreciate it. Ruby smiled warmly. It's no trouble at all, son. Take care. As Ruby walked away, David sat quietly on the bench, thinking about what she had said. There was something about her that made him feel hopeful, even though he had been feeling so lost just moments before. He wasn't sure if he could turn things around, but Ruby's words had planted a seed in his mind. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The next day, Ruby returned to the park. She had her usual grocery bags in her arms, and she was ready to offer her kindness to David once again. As she approached the bench, she saw him sitting there, looking a little different. He wasn't as slumped over, and his face looked a little less tired. "Good afternoon, David," Ruby greeted him with a smile. David looked up at her, and for the first time in a while, he returned her smile. "Good afternoon, Ruby," he said. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. I've started writing down one thing I'm thankful for each day." Ruby's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful, David. How's it been going?" David shrugged. "It's a little strange at first, but it's helping. It's like I'm starting to see the small things in life that I've been missing." Ruby nodded, proud of him. "That's the spirit. Sometimes the smallest things can make the biggest difference." The days passed, and Ruby continued her routine of walking to the market and visiting the park. Every day, she would stop by to see David, offering him not just food but her time and advice. She had noticed something different about him lately. His eyes weren't as dull as before, and he seemed a little lighter in spirit, as though he was slowly beginning to understand the importance of hope. David, for his part, was starting to open up more to Ruby. He found comfort in her presence. She didn't ask for anything in return for her kindness, and she never judged him. It was a feeling he hadn't had in a long time, and he began to look forward to their conversations. One afternoon, Ruby noticed that David was waiting for her on the bench, as usual. But today, there was something different in his expression. It wasn't just the usual tiredness or resignation. There was a hint of excitement in his eyes. "Good afternoon, David," Ruby greeted with a smile as she sat down beside him. "Good afternoon, Ruby," David replied, his voice filled with energy. "I've been thinking about what you said the other day, about doing something small every day to make tomorrow better. And you know what? I've been trying to get back into carpentry. I used to love it when I was younger." Ruby's heart swelled with pride at his words. She had suggested that he try picking up something he once enjoyed, and it seemed like David had taken that to heart. "Carpentry? That's wonderful, David. You've got a real talent for creating things with your hands. I remember you telling me about your father's workbench when you were younger. I bet you still have it in you." David's face brightened at her encouragement. "Well, I found an old toolbox in a thrift shop a few days ago. I bought it, and I've been trying to fix it up. It's not perfect, but I'm starting to feel like maybe this is what I was meant to do. I've always liked making things, but I just forgot about it for a while." Ruby smiled at the change she saw in him. "That's the spirit. Sometimes we lose sight of what makes us happy when life gets tough, but it's never too late to pick it back up. Have you thought about maybe using your skills to make something for someone else?" David thought about it for a moment. "I never really thought about that. I always made things for myself, but maybe I could make something for someone else. It would feel different." "Exactly," Ruby said. "Creating something with your hands for another person is a beautiful gift. It's more than just a physical object. It's a piece of your soul, a part of you that you're giving away. And you never know how much that can mean to someone." David sat quietly for a moment, pondering her words. He had never really thought about his carpentry skills in that way. It had always been something he did out of necessity, something that came easily to him. But Ruby's words had made him see it differently. "Maybe I'll make something for you, Ruby," David said suddenly. "I don't have much, but I'd like to make you something to thank you for everything you've done for me." Ruby's heart melted at his offer. "David, you don't have to do that. I've helped you because I want to, not because I expect anything in return." David smiled. "I know, but I still want to. I've never had anyone care about me like you do, Ruby. I want to do something for you." Ruby didn't know what to say. She had always given to others without expecting anything back, but there was something about David's gesture that touched her deeply. She placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Well, in that case, I'd be honored." For the next few days, David worked hard on his project. Ruby could see the difference in him. He was more focused, more determined. He had found something that sparked joy in him again, and it was giving him the strength to push forward. Ruby could tell that he was putting all of his effort into creating something special. She was proud of how far he had come, but she knew that he still had a long way to go. One afternoon, as Ruby made her way to the park, she found David already sitting on the bench, waiting for her. He had something beside him, covered by a cloth. "Ruby," he said with a grin, "I've got something for you." Ruby sat down beside him, curious. "Oh, David, you didn't have to. I've told you I don't need anything." "I know, but I wanted to," he replied, his excitement evident. "I finished the project I was working on. It's not much, but it's something I think you'll like." With a look of anticipation, David carefully lifted the cloth to reveal what he had made. Ruby gasped when she saw it. It was a small wooden rocking chair, beautifully crafted with smooth, polished wood. The design was simple yet elegant, with intricate carvings along the edges. It wasn't a large chair, but it looked comfortable, and it had a warmth to it that Ruby could almost feel. "David, it's beautiful," Ruby said, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't know what to say." David's face lit up at her reaction. "I'm glad you like it. I wanted to make something special, something that would remind you of the kindness you've shown me. I put a lot of work into it." Ruby reached out and gently ran her fingers along the carvings. "It's more than just a chair, David. It's a piece of your heart, and that's what makes it so special." David smiled, feeling a sense of pride that he hadn't felt in years. He had created something with his own hands, something that had meaning, something that could bring joy to another person. "You know, Ruby, I've been thinking a lot lately," David said, looking up at her. "Maybe I can turn this into something more. I've always loved carpentry, but I didn't think I could make a living from it. But now I'm starting to see that maybe I can. Maybe I can start making things for people, selling them and making a living that way." Ruby looked at him, proud of how far he had come. "I think that's a wonderful idea, David. You've got talent. Don't let anything hold you back. You deserve to live a life full of purpose and joy." David nodded, feeling a spark of hope ignite inside him. For the first time in a long time, he could see a future that wasn't defined by his past mistakes. He could see a path forward, one where he could create, build, and maybe even make a difference in someone else's life the way Ruby had made a difference in his. As the sun began to set, Ruby sat in the rocking chair, feeling the warmth of the wood beneath her and the weight of her own gratitude. She had helped David find his way again, but it was clear that he was going to make something great of his life. And that was all she had ever wanted for him. David stood beside her, watching her with a sense of fulfillment. "Thank you, Ruby," he said quietly, "for everything. You've changed my life." Ruby smiled up at him. "No, David, you've changed your life. I just showed you the way. And I'm proud of you." With that, they sat together in the park, the evening sky turning to shades of pink and orange. It was a peaceful moment, but one that held the promise of a brighter future ahead. David woke up early the next morning, the excitement of the previous day still fresh in his mind. He had given Ruby the rocking chair, and her reaction had made all his hard work worthwhile. For the first time in a long while, David felt like he had done something right. The chair wasn't perfect, but it was a sign that he could still create something meaningful. It wasn't just about making a living, it was about rediscovering who he was and what he loved to do. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden light over the city. David stood in front of his small apartment window, watching the world wake up. His hands were still sore from all the work he had done on the chair, but the pain didn't bother him anymore. It was the kind of pain that came from doing something fulfilling, something that made him feel alive. He had spent the last few days working on a new project. This time, he was making a small wooden table. It wasn't for anyone in particular, but he had decided to try his hand at something more complex. The wood was rough, and he had to use all his skills to shape it the way he wanted. But as the days went on, the table started to take form. He wasn't sure if it would be good enough to sell, but it felt like a step in the right direction. David was beginning to realize something important. He had been so focused on his failures for so long that he had forgotten how much he enjoyed working with his hands. His passion for carpentry had always been there, buried beneath layers of disappointment and fear. But now, with each piece of wood he worked on, he was reminded of the joy that came from creating something from nothing. As the days passed, David started to feel more confident. He kept working on his projects, one after another, and each time he felt like he was getting better. He would take them to the local market to see if anyone was interested in buying them. At first, he didn't have much luck. People would admire his work but then move on, not buying anything. But David didn't let it discourage him. He knew that success wouldn't come overnight, and he was willing to keep trying. One afternoon, as David walked through the market, he spotted Ruby sitting on a bench near the park entrance. She was reading a book, her face relaxed in the peaceful afternoon light. David hadn't seen her in a few days, and he was eager to show her what he had been working on. He walked over to her with a smile on his face. "Ruby, it's good to see you again," David said as he approached. Ruby looked up from her book and smiled warmly. "David, it's always a pleasure to see you. How have you been?" "I've been good, really good, actually." "I've been working on some new projects," he said, sitting down beside her. "I've been practicing my carpentry, and I think I'm getting the hang of it. I even made a table, but I'm not sure if it's good enough to sell yet." Ruby's eyes lit up. "A table? That's wonderful. I'd love to see it. You've come so far since we first met." David chuckled. "It's still a work in progress, but I'll bring it by next time. I think it's a step in the right direction." Ruby nodded approvingly. "You're doing great, David. I can see the change in you. You've come a long way from the person I met in the park. You found something that makes you happy again, and that's what matters." David felt a sense of warmth spread through him at her words. He had never been one to easily accept compliments, but Ruby's encouragement always felt different. She saw something in him that he hadn't seen in himself for a long time, and that made all the difference. As they continued to talk, David felt a sense of clarity. He had been so focused on the past, so focused on his failures, that he had almost forgotten how to look forward. But now, with Ruby's support, he was starting to see a future for himself. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was possible. And for the first time in a long time, that felt enough. Over the next few weeks, David kept working on his carpentry. The table he had been working on was starting to look better with each passing day. He added more details, smoothed out the rough edges, and polished the surface until it shone. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best thing he had ever made. And that was enough for him. One Saturday afternoon, David decided to take his table to the market. He wasn't sure if anyone would want to buy it, but he felt like it was time to give it a shot. He carefully loaded the table into the back of his old truck and drove to the market. When he arrived, he set the table up near the entrance, where people would see it as they walked by. At first, the table didn't attract much attention. People would glance at it, admire the craftsmanship, and then move on, but David didn't let that discourage him. He kept his head high and reminded himself that success wasn't guaranteed. He had to keep trying, no matter how long it took. A few hours passed, and David was beginning to lose hope, but then something unexpected happened. A woman walked up to the table and ran her fingers along the smooth surface. She smiled and turned to David. "This is beautiful," she said. "How much are you asking for it?" David's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected anyone to be interested, but here was someone actually asking to buy it. "I'm asking $50, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman nodded. "I'll take it." David's eyes widened in surprise. "Really?" The woman smiled. "Yes, I'll take it. It's exactly what I've been looking for. I can see the work you put into it." David felt a rush of pride and excitement. He had sold his first piece of furniture. It wasn't a huge sale, but it was a start. It was proof that his hard work was paying off, that he was on the right path. As the woman paid him and left with the table, David stood there for a moment, stunned. He had done it. He had taken a chance, put in the effort, and it had worked. His life wasn't going to change overnight, but this was a sign that things were moving in the right direction. When he returned to the park the next day, he couldn't wait to tell Ruby what had happened. He found her sitting on the same bench, just as she always was. He walked up to her, a wide grin on his face. "Ruby, guess what? I sold the table," David said, barely able to contain his excitement. Ruby's face lit up with joy. "David, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you. I knew you could do it." David felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "I never could have done it without you, Ruby. You've been the one to keep me going when I felt like giving up." Ruby shook her head. "No, David, you did the hard work. I just gave you a little encouragement. You believed in yourself, and that's what made the difference." David smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had a long way to go, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was finally on the right path. And as he looked at Ruby, he knew that he owed much of his progress to her. Her kindness, her belief in him had given him the strength to keep going. They sat together in the park, talking about life and the future as the sun began to set. It was a peaceful moment, one that David would never forget. He had found a new purpose, a new direction for his life, and it was all thanks to Ruby's unwavering support. David's small victory at the market was the first step, but he knew that it wasn't enough to change everything. Still, he couldn't ignore the joy he felt when he sold that table. It was more than just a sale. It was a sign that he had taken a chance and that his efforts had been recognized. That feeling stayed with him for days, carrying him through the harder moments when things didn't seem so easy. He spent the next few weeks working on more projects. With every piece of furniture he made, David's confidence grew. He started experimenting with different designs and techniques. Some projects didn't turn out as well as he hoped, but each failure taught him something new. He learned to be patient with himself, to take things one step at a time, and not to rush the process. He realized that building something meaningful wasn't about perfection. It was about effort, persistence, and the desire to improve. Ruby continued to be a steady source of support. She'd visit him at the park when he was working on a project, offering encouragement and advice. Sometimes she would just sit there quietly, watching as he worked. David found comfort in her presence, and he appreciated the fact that she never pressured him. She simply believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. One day, as David was putting the finishing touches on a new set of chairs, Ruby arrived at the park with a broad smile on her face. She was holding something in her hand, and David couldn't help but feel curious. "Ruby, what's that?" he asked, setting down his tools to give her his full attention. Ruby held out a small card to him. "I got something for you," she said, her voice full of warmth. "It's a business card. I've been talking to a few people, and they're interested in your work." David's eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean? Who's interested?" "Well, there's a local furniture shop, and they're looking for someone to make custom pieces. I told them about you, and they want to meet with you to see if you'd be a good fit." "I think this could be a great opportunity for you, David," Ruby explained. David was speechless for a moment. This was more than he had ever expected, a chance to work with a furniture shop. It felt like his dream was beginning to come true, but at the same time he wasn't sure if he was ready for something this big. "I don't know, Ruby," David said, running a hand through his hair. "What if I mess it up? I mean, I'm still learning. What if I'm not good enough?" Ruby gave him a gentle look of reassurance. "David, you're more than capable. You've already proven that with the pieces you've made. This is just the next step. You don't have to be perfect, you just need to try. And remember, you won't be doing this alone. You'll have people there to guide you, but you have to take the chance." David looked down at the card in his hand, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. It was a big step, but Ruby was right. He couldn't let fear hold him back. He had come so far already, and this could be the opportunity he had been waiting for. After a moment of hesitation, David nodded. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll meet with them." Ruby smiled. "That's the spirit. I know you'll do great. I'm proud of you, David." The meeting was scheduled for the following week, and David spent the next few days preparing. He made sure to bring a few of his best pieces to show the owners of the furniture shop. He was nervous, but he knew this was the right opportunity. As he worked on the pieces, he kept reminding himself that he was capable. He had put in the work, and now it was time to show others what he could do. The day of the meeting arrived, and David's nerves were on edge. He had never done anything like this before, and the thought of walking into a professional setting where people would judge his work made him feel anxious. But Ruby's words echoed in his mind, giving him the strength to push forward. "You can do this," he whispered to himself. When David arrived at the furniture shop, he was greeted by the owner, a middle-aged man named Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence had a friendly face and a firm handshake, which helped put David at ease. They walked through the shop together as David showed him the pieces he had brought. The owner asked him questions about his process, his experience, and how he came up with his designs. David felt himself becoming more comfortable as they talked, and he realized that Mr. Lawrence wasn't looking for perfection. He was looking for passion and dedication, two things that David had in abundance. "You've got a real talent," Mr. Lawrence said as they looked at one of the chairs David had made. "The craftsmanship is solid and you've got a good eye for design. I can see you've put a lot of work into these. I think we could use someone like you." David's heart skipped a beat. "You mean, you want to hire me?" Mr. Lawrence smiled. "Yes, I'd like you to come work for us. We're looking for someone who can make custom furniture for our clients." You'll have the chance to create unique pieces and will help you improve your skills along the way. What do you say? David's mind raced. This was everything he had dreamed of, a chance to work professionally as a carpenter to create pieces that would be sold in a store. It was a huge opportunity, and he felt a rush of excitement at the thought of what the future might hold. I'd love to, David said, barely able to contain his joy. Thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Lawrence extended his hand, and David shook it, feeling a sense of pride swell within him. He had done it. He had taken the leap, and now he was moving forward. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of learning and growing. David started working at the shop, and each day was a new challenge. He was surrounded by experienced craftsmen who taught him new techniques and gave him valuable feedback. David worked hard to improve, and slowly but surely he began to see his skills develop. He made custom pieces for clients, each one more complicated than the last, and with each piece he felt more confident in his abilities. Through it all, Ruby was there to offer encouragement. She would visit him at the shop from time to time, bringing him lunch or just checking in to see how he was doing. She had always believed in him, and now she could see that he was on the right path. One evening, after a long day at work, David sat down on a bench in the park, exhausted but satisfied with the progress he had made. Ruby found him there just as she always did. "How's it going, David?" she asked, sitting beside him. "It's going great, Ruby," David said with a tired smile. "I've been learning a lot and I'm getting better every day. I'm finally starting to feel like I belong in this world of carpentry." Ruby looked at him with pride. "I knew you could do it, David. You just needed to believe in yourself." David smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He had come so far from being a man lost and uncertain of his future to someone who now had a purpose, and he owed so much of that to Ruby. "Thank you, Ruby," David said, "for everything. You've been the one constant in my life, always there when I needed you." Ruby placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to thank me, David. You've done all the hard work. I just helped you see the possibilities." David nodded, knowing that she was right. He had worked hard, but it was Ruby's belief in him that had made all the difference. She had been the one to help him see that he could have a future, that he could do something meaningful with his life. As they sat together in the park, watching the sun set behind the trees, David realized that he had finally found his place. He was no longer defined by his failures or his past mistakes. He had found his passion again, and with it, he had found a new sense of purpose. And as he looked at Ruby, he knew that their journey together wasn't over yet. There was still so much to learn, so much to accomplish. But for the first time in a long time, David was excited about what the future held. The days following David's new job at the furniture shop were filled with excitement and challenges. He had made it. He was officially a carpenter, working in a shop that was respected in the community. But he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were so many things to learn, and he had to keep pushing himself to grow and improve every day. But despite the challenges, David felt a sense of purpose he hadn't had in years. His first few weeks at the shop were spent learning the ins and outs of professional carpentry. He had worked on many projects before, but this was different. The standards were higher, the clients were more demanding, and the work had to be perfect. At first, David felt overwhelmed. There were times when he doubted his abilities, thinking that maybe he wasn't cut out for this after all. But each time he felt down, he remembered what Ruby had told him. "You don't have to be perfect, David. You just need to try your best." Ruby's words became his mantra. Whenever he made a mistake, whenever something didn't turn out the way he wanted it to, he reminded himself that he was learning and growing. He wasn't expected to be perfect, just to keep improving. And slowly but surely, David's confidence grew. One afternoon, while David was working on a custom-made bookshelf, the door to the shop opened, and a man walked in. He was tall, dressed in a suit, and had a confident air about him. He walked up to the counter where Mr. Lawrence, the shop owner, was standing. They exchanged greetings, and Mr. Lawrence looked over at David. "David, come over here," Mr. Lawrence called. David wiped his hands on a rag and walked over to the counter. "Yes, Mr. Lawrence?" "This is Mr. Weston," Mr. Lawrence said, introducing the man in the suit. "He's a designer. He's been looking for someone to create a few custom pieces for his clients, and I thought you might be a good fit." David's heart raced. This was a big opportunity. He had only been working at the shop for a few weeks, and now someone wanted to commission him for custom work. He felt both excited and nervous at the same time. "It's nice to meet you, David," Mr. Weston said, extending his hand. David shook it, trying to remain calm. Nice to meet you too, Mr. Weston. Mr. Weston smiled. I've seen some of your work around the shop and I'm impressed. I'm looking for someone who can create a few custom pieces for a project I'm working on. Are you interested? David's mind raced. This was a huge opportunity. He had been waiting for something like this, but he wasn't sure if he was ready for such a big challenge. He glanced at Mr. Lawrence, who gave him an encouraging nod. David took a deep breath and smiled. I'd be honored to work on your project, Mr. Weston, he said, his voice steady. Mr. Weston smiled. Great, I'll be in touch with the details soon. After Mr. Weston left the shop, David felt a surge of excitement. This was it. This was the moment he had been working for. A chance to make a name for himself, to prove that he belonged in the world of carpentry. But at the same time, he felt a sense of pressure. What if he messed up? What if he wasn't good enough? He couldn't let those doubts take over. Later that evening, David went to the park, as he often did after work. He needed a moment to relax and think things through. As he walked toward the bench where Ruby usually sat, he saw her waiting for him just as she always did. Her face lit up when she saw him and she waved. David, you look like you've got something on your mind, Ruby said, smiling warmly. David sat down beside her and let out a deep breath. I do. Mr. Weston came into the shop today. He wants me to create custom pieces for a project he's working on. Ruby's eyes sparkled. That's amazing, David. I knew you were ready for something like this. David shook his head. I don't know, Ruby. It feels like a lot of pressure. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not good enough? Ruby placed a hand on his shoulder. David, you've come so far. You've already proven that you can do this. Don't let fear hold you back. You've got the talent and you've got the heart. You just need to believe in yourself. David looked at her, feeling comforted by her words. You really think I can do it? I know you can, Ruby said firmly. You've worked hard to get where you are, and I believe in you. Don't let doubt steal this opportunity from you. This is your chance to shine. David smiled, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. Ruby's belief in him always made him feel stronger, more capable. He realized that she was right. He had already come so far, and this was just the next step. If he didn't take the chance, he would never know what he was capable of. The next few days were filled with hard work as David prepared for the project. He spent hours sketching out designs, figuring out the best materials to use, and carefully planning every detail. It wasn't easy, but he enjoyed every moment of it. For the first time, he felt like he was doing something that mattered, something that had the potential to change his life. When the day came to meet with Mr. Weston and present his ideas, David felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. He arrived at the meeting with his designs in hand, ready to show Mr. Weston what he had come up with. Mr. Weston looked over the sketches and nodded. These are excellent, David, he said. I can see the thought you've put into this. Let's move forward. David's heart swelled with pride. He had done it. Mr. Weston was impressed, and that was all he needed to know. He was on the right track. Over the next few weeks, David worked tirelessly to bring the designs to life. The pieces were more complicated than anything he had done before, but with each challenge, he grew stronger. He worked late into the night, making sure that every detail was perfect. When the pieces were finally finished, David felt a sense of pride unlike anything he had ever felt before. These weren't just any pieces of furniture. They were his creations, a reflection of his talent and hard work. The day Mr. Weston came to pick up the pieces, David was nervous. He stood in the shop, his hands trembling slightly as he waited. Mr. Weston arrived, and David showed him the completed pieces. Mr. Weston inspected them carefully, running his hands along the smooth wood and checking the craftsmanship. David held his breath, waiting for his judgment. Well, David, Mr. Weston said, looking up with a smile. I have to say I'm impressed. These are exactly what I was looking for. You've exceeded my expectations. David couldn't help but grin. Thank you, Mr. Weston. I'm glad you like them. Mr. Weston handed David a check along with a business card. I have more projects coming up. I'd like you to work on them as well. You've got a real future in this business, David. Keep up the good work. David took the check and card, feeling a surge of excitement. This was it, his big break. He had done it. He had proven himself not just to Mr. Weston, but to himself. He had taken the leap, faced his fears, and succeeded. Later that evening, David went to the park to find Ruby. He had to tell her the good news. When he saw her sitting on the bench, he rushed over to her, unable to contain his excitement. Ruby, I did it, Mr. Weston loved the pieces and he wants me to work on more projects. Ruby's face lit up with pride. I knew you could do it, David. I'm so proud of you. David sat down beside her, feeling a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. I couldn't have done it without you, Ruby. You were the one who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You helped me see that I could do this. Ruby smiled, her eyes soft with affection. You did all the hard work, David. I just reminded you of what you're capable of. You've made it this far on your own. David looked at her, grateful for her presence in his life. I'll never forget that, Ruby. You've changed my life. As the sun set behind them, David realized that his journey was just beginning. He had come so far, and now he had a future full of possibilities. And through it all, Ruby had been there, guiding him, believing in him, and showing him that anything was possible if he was willing to try.